That's what you've been doing.
All right, guys, we're going to get the show on the road a couple minutes early. That's all right. I got a lot of stuff I want to talk about today. I'm going to pass this sheet around. This is a sign-in sheet. If you don't mind giving us your name, email, phone number, that type of stuff, if you don't want to, that's fine too. It's not a requirement. This is an all-recovery meeting. Typically, the format's a little bit different, where we have the table set up different and it's more of an open share. Today, I try to get in here whenever I can when I'm not traveling and I can get in on a Saturday and do a lecture. So pick a different topic and kind of go through that. We'll talk at the beginning about substance use disorder and just give you some brief information in that area. And then I'm going to move into this subject called positive psychology. Positive psychology is about, believe it or not, you can identify interventions and things that you can do in your everyday life that have been proven, thank you very much, have been proven to raise subjective well-being or happiness, and it lowers stress and puts you in a better mood. And if you're not into a better mood and you just want to be miserable, that's cool too. You can go if you want, or you can hang. If you're here and you need to get a sheet signed, whether it's the conditional discharge program or the New Start program, whatever it may be, Taka, right here, Taka, she's one of our recovery coaches. At noon, you can, at 1, you can give her that sheet and you can go ahead and roll out, because this will probably go a little bit past 1. And if anyone needs to leave, just leave. If you all get up and leave at the same time at 1, it'll be very damaging to my self-esteem. But hey, whatever. That's but if I'm not through everything, I'll probably just keep going. Is that cool?
Yes.
All right. A couple other things. I'm going to talk about the science around substance use disorder and the things that we know about this issue. And I don't know if anybody's ever heard the term recoveryism. Recoveryism, it wasn't coined by Faber Greenville. It was coined by this person who started a program called Rational Recovery. And basically it goes like this. There's this weird tendency in the recovery world we really want to think we're right. And we really want to think our way of doing it is the only way of doing it. And you need to understand something, guys. There's never been anything in the history of the world that's been so wrong than this idea that there's one way to do recovery. Well, maybe when they used to think the earth was flat, right? The earth is round, if anyone thought it was so flat. So maybe that was a little bit different, but this concept that here's how you do it, you got to do it my way, and you got to follow these directions, there's no validity to that. Now, that is absolutely one way to do it, and we promote all pathways, including this idea of some of the traditional pathways. I got recovery through that process. We promote clinical recovery, which would be you see a therapist. We promote, some people get this through exercise programs, some people get it through church. Most people change who they're hanging out with, right? They get a new group of folks to be around. Most people pursue a healthy lifestyle. But I'm going to tell you what I think about it. But you still, even with the information I'm giving you, understand that it's my take, and I don't want to stand up here and act as if I know everything either. You get that? Because I'm going to come off like I do, because that's what I do. But at the same time, you're responsible for your life. I guess this is where I want to go with this. You guys are responsible for your life, and you're responsible for your recovery. And if it doesn't work, who's going to suffer? It's going to be you. It's not going to be me. It's not going to be your sponsor, your therapist, or your group. It'll be you. So no matter what you need to do, get it right. Get it right. All right? And this quote, it speaks to what I'm trying to say. Like, we live in this world where people love to tell you how it is, whether it's politics, religion, recovery, football teams, right? I mean, here in South Carolina, I'm not even going to go there. Not even going to go there. But we like to look at each other and tell you exactly what's up. And these are the facts, and we speak like with this certainty about things that there's no way to be certain of. There's just zero. And the more we talk about it, and the more we argue with somebody, and we get in a room with somebody who disagrees with us, and they tell us their opinion, and we have the opposite opinion, what happens then? We dig in to our position, because we're going to defend ourselves. You know, but then weirdly, when we're in recovery, out of the same side of our mouth we say, but be open-minded. Isn't it weird? It's like, be open-minded as long as you agree with me. Open-minded to a certain extent. You know, I'll tell you where the parameters are. So I want to try to encourage us to be very, very open-minded and to understand that at the end of the day, all we want to do is to see people's lives improve, see people's families come back together, start to move in the right direction. I don't care what you call it or how you do it. Is that a fair enough agreement with everybody in the group?
Yep.
And it gets really strange when you start to talk about medicine. Because when we go see a doctor, we do not want to be told, well, maybe this is what we think is going on. Maybe, here's what's up. We're pretty sure this is what's happening with you, and we're pretty sure that this is what you should do about it. That is not very comforting, is it? But the deal is, a lot of medicine, you really don't know exactly what's going on. And there are multiple ways to attack it. And the truth is, the best thing that the person talking to you could do would be to tell you that, rather than to tell you, here's exactly what's happening to you and here's exactly what you need to do. You guys get that part? And it happens in all aspects of medicine. It doesn't just happen in substance use disorder and mental health, although in substance use disorder and mental health, it's most pronounced. I had a situation with my son, I guess at this point it would have been not this past summer, but the summer before. And he was hospitalized. He had this strange illness. He was rushed to Children's Hospital in Pittsburgh. University of Pittsburgh Medical Center has a children's hospital. And they were up there visiting our family. His throat shuts. It swells shut. He gets this virus. It's the strangest thing. He gets rushed to the hospital. He has to be put into a drug-induced coma. He has to be intubated where they put a tube down his throat. He's like that for 3 days. And the kid's 6 years old. They call me on the phone and say, you better get up here. I'm like, what does that mean? Does that mean my son's going to die? Like, what's going on here? So there's no flights at 11 o'clock on a Saturday. So I drive the whole way from Greenville, South Carolina to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, as fast as I possibly can. And we get there and we start, what's wrong with him is what we want to know, right? We want to know what's wrong. And they can't tell us. They don't know because they run this test and it's negative. And they run that test and it's negative. And they run this test and it's negative. And we think it could be this and it's negative. And and these test guys are things like leukemia. The one was for bone cancer. So these aren't tests for like little things. And every one of these tests, what am I doing? When I'm waiting for the results, what am I doing? Just losing my mind. It would have been better if they just said, we have no freaking clue what it is. We'll run these tests to make sure it's not that. We don't necessarily think it's that, but we're gonna, you know what I mean? Yeah. And here's what we think you should do with them. And the solution to the situation involved something that the hospitals don't even do. It involved them kind of going out of their procedures because I just pitched a fit. And they allowed us to do some home health care, if you will. I don't know what the term would be other than that they typically don't. You know what I mean? Instead of going into the office, we were allowed to have there's some heavy-duty medicine that you can use in situations like that. But they typically want you to come into the hospital to do it because if you use it and it's not that problem, it could be worse. So they allowed us to do that. My point being, the solution was actually something that had never been done before. The kid's been okay for a year. And it turns out it has a lot to do with the food he eats. How about that? It has to do with the allergies and things going on that end that didn't even get discussed. My point being that, and this chart really shows it well, there are only a few things that we are 100% sure of, even in all of medicine. So what you have is, on this quadrant, you have why is this happening? Why is this kid sick? Why can't this person walk? This is why. And this is, how do we help? What do we do? This up here is precise, meaning we know exactly what to do. This over here means we know exactly what caused it. You guys get this? Mm-hmm. So if you have a broken arm or a broken leg, we know what's causing the pain. Look, Taka, you broke your leg. There it is. Look at it. That's why you're in pain. We know exactly what to do. We're going to put a cast on you. And you're going to be able to walk in 8 weeks. That's pretty darn predictable, right? On the whole other side of the spectrum is where you find addiction and mental health. On the whole other side of the spectrum, meaning we don't even know why the hell you feel the way you feel, and we don't really know what to do with you. So what winds up happening is we try different things, people do different things. If you've ever been on any kind of medication for a mental health issue, this will make a lot of sense. You might have been in a situation where a bunch of different meds were tried. So you're trying this, you're trying that, you're trying this, you're trying that. The dirty little secret there is it's kind of like the diagnostic process. If you respond to this, then it means that it's this disorder. If you respond to this, then it's probably this disorder. But you guys, we don't talk like that. When you come and see me as a therapist, what do I do? I talk to you for a while, and then we're going to leave. I tell you exactly what's up. Well, I don't do that, but that's the way I was trained to do it, and that's how I'm supposed to do it. But I would prefer to stand up here and tell you, like, I'm going to tell you today what I think's going on, but I could be full of shit. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Actually, I'm probably not full of shit. I'm really not, but I also at the same time don't want to act like I looked inside everyone's brain and did it, and all of us are exactly the same, right? We all are dealing with it. There's so many different factors that contribute to your particular situation. Does that make sense to everybody? Are we cool with that part of it? So what do we know? We know that substance use disorders fall on the intuitive end of the spectrum. We know that there's a lot of different things that interplay into this process, and I'm going to talk about positive psychology because positive psychology can improve your mood and reduce your stress, but positive psychology was not developed to help somebody if they were severely depressed. And this is very important. Positive psychology is not meant to pull you out of a deep depression. What do I mean by deep depression? If you can't get out of bed in the morning, if you aren't eating, if you're hopeless, if you're suicidal, it's meant to take you, if you're above that, let's pretend on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe you're at a 3, positive psychology can take you to a 7. But it's not designed, if you're at a 0, to take you to a 2. Is that clear for everybody? That's important to understand. And there's so many different things that contribute to it, so many different things that you have to take into consideration in your own personal life. If you have any co-occurring mental health issues that you're dealing with, that's important to understand and acknowledge and make sure you're getting specialty consultation for that. What about trauma? I mean, trauma is a huge issue for some of us, and it's something that we have to acknowledge. And the way that I respond as a kid who grew up in a home where there was domestic violence and unpredictability, my father was a binge drinker, and if you know anything about that, you can go periods of time without it, but then when you're on it, it's like game over, right? It's just terrible things happening. That's a strange way to grow up, and as a little kid, you're kind of like nervous and anxious all the time. So my experience would be different than somebody who didn't have that. And you guys know yourselves, and you know what you're dealing with, so you want to make sure, as we're talking today, that you're taking that into consideration. And I do want to stop here for a minute to see if anybody has any questions or concerns around this stuff, and anything I can help with in that regard. It usually requires a psychiatrist. A good consulting psychiatrist can be very, very important. A therapist, somebody who's trained in trauma, would be very, very important. Anybody have any questions about the co-occurring part of this before I jump into a couple other things? And if not, that's okay too. Anything up? Yes?
I'm Macaulay. I'm an alcoholic.
And Macaulay.
You know, I've been dually diagnosed, and the problem I seem to find coming from psychiatrists is their reluctance to prescribe based on the addictive side of my brain.
Yeah.
And one thing I've found in that regard, when the mental health side is taken care of, the addiction is not nearly as difficult to control. But yet, when they do not want to prescribe because of fear of addiction, they're looking into the future, thinking, well, if I do this now, what could happen 5 years from now? Why don't we take care of something at present and disregard the future for the time being? Because
Well, and so, I mean, it's a great point. It's exactly what I'm talking about. And I also think, guys, to a certain extent, we're moving through a period of time where things will start to be different in the future. You got to remember, this addiction stuff and this substance use disorder and talking about it different and thinking about it different, it's brand new, man. I mean, if you really want to get honest and you want to look at the history of addiction, let's just take your example. In America, how it's been handled is addiction has been totally separated from mental health. And basically, you know, back in the day, they would tell you, we're not even going to touch your mental health until you're sober for a year. And now that starts to change. But remember, they've never even studied it. How about this point? It's never been studied. It hasn't been researched. We were told to be anonymous. I was told to be anonymous, meaning I wasn't going to talk to anybody about it. Hell, you didn't even know I was working in treatment at a mental health facility in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I wouldn't tell them I was in recovery because I thought they would ask me, because I was a therapist, right, who was in recovery working in mental health, and I was so stigmatized that I was like, this is going to go down bad, man, if they find out I'm actually like addicted. I was addicted. You know what I mean? I would get painted and labeled in a certain way. And the reason is, guys, it operated in the dark for 70 years, man. And every one of us were exactly the same. You were either an addict or you weren't. How about that phenomenon? Literally, like, on Wednesday, you could be okay. You could probably even go get tuned up at the company Christmas party. But if on Thursday you went to an AA meeting or you went to see a therapist and you decided you were an alcoholic, you are now like, bam, don't ever drink again. You're looking at alcohol, Rich. I see you looking at the Coors Light Twins. Right? And so everybody's nervous and stuff, but what was the difference? The difference was just a label. The difference was just a word that they threw on me at a certain point in time. Now, the good news is it's starting to finally change. Over the last 5 to 10 years, people have finally started saying, whoa, wait a minute, I don't buy that. Studies have been done, and you see that 46% of people with severe substance use disorder report that they resolved it on their own, meaning that they figured it out. Now, when you talk to them, you see some very common themes. They just don't identify the themes. You know what I mean? Like, whereas if they talk to me, I would be able to tell them my pathway to recovery. When you talk to a lot of folks, they just do common things that we do. They quit hanging out in the wrong places. They try to lead a healthy lifestyle, but 46% figure it out. Most people start to figure it out as they get a little older, too. That's a really important thing to understand. Like, as you get older, it gets harder to maintain the lifestyle. Like, it's much harder to go on a run at 42 than it is at 22. You're just like it is much different. Like, I'd have a really hard time going over to the YMCA and playing basketball all day. But back in the day, I could do that, and my body would respond. The same thing with substances. So as you get older, it gets a little easier. We believe that we can't wait, though. We have to get in there and have conversations, mainly because of the dangerous nature of the substances that are out there now. This is when I got into recovery, guys, in 2001. 9,000 people died of an overdose that whole entire year. Last year, 73,000 people died. So we can't really wait, but we have to change the conversation. And the conversation has to go from, let me figure out which one of you guys are addicted so that I can make you say you're addicted and make you go to rehab, to what? Here's what's going down, man, and here's what's safe, and here's what's not safe, and here's what we recommend. Here's what we think is going to happen if you keep doing this. But you ultimately have to make the choice, and you run your life. We want to empower you. Now, I am not supposed to say that to you. Why am I not supposed to say that to you? What would people who don't agree with me say? What would be one of the main reasons they would tell me not to say that is, Rich, you're going to kill people. That you guys are going to take what I said, and you're going to leave here today, and you're going to go, and you're going to say, well, I'm just going to go get high. That's the biggest sack of shit in the world. Like, if you are addicted, you're going to get high. You don't care what Rich Jones says. Right. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you don't really care. You do not need my endorsement to go out and use. It's like, man, I was going to get high today, but Rich said not to. Right? If that's where you're at, then you're not actually addicted. You know what I mean? Like, when I was addicted, I didn't care if the president called me and told me not to. I'd be like, thank you very much for that. Do you have any pills in your bathroom? You know? So it's like, we got to have a more common sense approach. And I do want to tell you a couple things that's interesting, maybe related to the co-occurring stuff, but in general, since the research is going down, there's for the first time that I've ever seen, there's like all these competing theories around what addiction is. It's always been the brain disease model, meaning some of us, our brain changes, and once you're like a cucumber turns into a pickle, you're always a pickle. You ever hear that phrase? So, and I do believe that that's the case for some people. But what's going on is a guy like this is Mark Lewis. He's probably the most famous guy pushing back on this. He's saying that's not really what's going down, man. This is like a learned behavior where essentially what we're doing when we're out there and we're going after it is we're chasing relief. And we've got into this habit of chasing relief. Now, some substances come with the physiological part of it too, right? We have to acknowledge, like when I was on opioids, man, I was dope sick when I didn't have it. So that part of it drives you as well. Is that clear? Yes. So that's part of it too. But the psychological stuff is you just get you're like chasing this for relief and for happiness. You're chasing this for relief and for happiness. And for some people, that might be a party at first. And for other people, it might be that's the only way to get through life. I learned when I was at Western Psych. Now, when I was at Western Psychiatric Institute Clinic in Pittsburgh, I was employed by the mental health system, meaning they had a different way of looking at this stuff. And my supervisor one time told me, who the hell do you think you are telling these people to quit these drugs? I was working with homeless people in the city of Pittsburgh, and drugs were keeping them alive. Do you get it? Yep. Like, how do I tell a person who doesn't have a place to sleep that they should come to a meeting with me and get clean? They're not worried about that. What are they worried about? What am I going to eat today? Where am I going to lay my head? And so what I'm saying is that we have to take all this stuff into consideration. And we're allowed to talk about it. You guys, you can wrestle with these thoughts, and it doesn't mean you have to go get high. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't mean any of that. The number one, I'll be honest with you, the number one predictor of whether or not you'll lapse is where you're spending your time and who you're talking to. It's super difficult to say no if you're still hanging with the dope man and you're doing all that stuff. It's kind of that simple. And so this is Mark Lewis. This is the other side of the coin. This is the brain change stuff. This is the PET scans. This is the stuff that says, Rich, your brain has changed. And I'm down with that in my particular case. I do believe this applies to me. And the reason is I was using for a really long time. And the evidence suggests that's the case. But I have never personally had a brain scan. And brain scans are exceedingly expensive. And if we really wanted to do this right, insurance companies would pay for them, but they don't. So you're probably going to come up with about 15 grand out of pocket. And I would say that another symptom of not being addicted is having 15 grand in your pocket. Okay? So you know, that you're probably not going to know for sure what's going down with that. And then you get into this situation where you got to acknowledge that in America, a lot of people like to get tuned up. And many people who get tuned up don't really kind of cross that line into some of the stuff that we experience. So how do you tell the difference? You know, you get a lot of people, go to a college campus on any Friday night. There's a lot of people who are in this risky use zone. And they're just going crazy, and really bad stuff can happen. But they probably didn't cross the line quite yet. You know, so how do you, if you treat them the same as this, what's that like, and how do you handle that? That's another part of the complication, because a lot of these folks are winding up in groups like Favor and different types of places. The other thing that complicates this are these fake pills that are running around, and heroin and stuff, and now methamphetamine and cocaine cut with fentanyl. I just want to tell you a fact. In South Carolina, more people die from cocaine and fentanyl than heroin and fentanyl. Okay? So it's very misleading that this is only an opioid thing. Fentanyl's getting thrown into everything. But you see how that gets weird. And then you got people over here who aren't using currently. That actually means like that's like social use. It's like my wife, she'll drink like half a glass of wine. And it's just freaking weird, man. I'm like, that's just, I don't even like that you're doing that. You should pound that whole bottle or not drink all. So yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Jesse. I'm returning. Been gone for some time. Hi, everyone. You're saying a couple things that I need to ask about.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go back to the first thing you said. You said something, you were joking, but you said, I don't think I'm going to use it because Rich told me not to.
Right.
I wanted to ask, like, is that, because I don't necessarily think that way. I actually had a recovery coach at one time, and for me, the guilt of
Okay,
facing
yeah.
him,
It's fair.
that kept me from doing it sometimes. And so I actually had, it got so bad where I actually had to just stop coming because I was so embarrassed. I said, there's no way I'm gonna.
So,
I can't lie
man,
to
I'm
myself.
so glad you said that, because first of all, that's tragic that would ever happen. It's tragic that you would ever stay away from a group because
There
you.
was other things involved
Okay.
too, like there were things, family members were involved in ways and were communicating things that I didn't necessarily want communicated. And so I was embarrassed
Yeah.
as well. It was more of a shame factor, and I felt like I couldn't lie to myself and him and
Yeah.
have a good conscience about it. And so there were several, and if I didn't talk to him, I did feel like I was more like the TV, but if I did talk to him, I actually didn't want to.
So I think that's a different. I don't know if you guys could hear what he was talking about. You're talking about a relationship. You know what I mean? Somebody that you know well. I feel like that's a little different than me kind of talking at a lecture and just giving information. If you knew me, I probably would have more influence over you. You know, if I know people that I've known one-on-one had a lot more influence over me. The bigger point I'm trying to make is that it's okay to discuss this because you guys, the idea would be you get good objective information, right? You get good information so that you can make good decisions as you move forward. A lot of you have already made good decisions about this. You're in the recovery process. You're trying. And to a certain extent, maybe I'm preaching to the choir a little bit with you guys. But I also believe that this is a message that needs to be given to everybody. Because remember, like, people use substances at all kinds of different levels. And if you think about it, you know, substances, this is going to sound really strange, but you got to bear with me. There's this thing called the LD50, which stands for lethal dose that'll kill 50% of the population. Like, it's hard to say what's going to kill any of us of any given substance because we're all different. Like, in other words, I can put a lot more in my body than Joni could. So, there is studies that'll tell you, here's the amount that will kill half the people that use it. It's called the LD50. And they do that for everything, guys. They do it for sugar. And they also do it for drugs. And here's the deal. More people will die from sugar than die from drugs. But when a diabetic makes a mistake, they don't get hammered the way we get hammered when we make a mistake. Do you get this? Now, I also understand that's because a diabetic is much less likely to hold up the Sphinx for a Twinkie than I am to, like, hold it up. You know what I mean? So there's a reality to the situation that makes it easier for people to get angry at us. But in theory, guys, we're kind of working on killing ourselves slowly, right? Like, if you think about a lot of substance use, it's taking chances. But it's not just drugs and alcohol to do that. You start naming other substances, and you start how about other behaviors that can take you down that road? And that's why I want to try to get us in touch with this idea that this is a particular area of our lives that we need to take a really serious look at. And we really need to make some good decisions. But we also don't want to, like, label ourselves as successes or failure. There's no black and white, you're in recovery or you're not in recovery. It's a process, man. And the one thing that you can do more important than anything is come back as soon as you can if you screw up. You get that policy, that self-policy of, like, nothing's going to keep me away. No shame, no guilt, none of that. Come back in, here I am, it's my life, I'm here to get some help. You know what I mean? So you work on that. And the other reason why it's important to have a group or to have people to talk to, because if everybody figures it out on their own, right? You know, well, Richard said everybody figures out, why do we need favor? Well, one of the things is that you probably actually need it for other areas of your life more than even not using, if you want to get real about it. So here's what's interesting. This is a long-term sociological study of people in recovery. And this is stress. And when you enter into recovery, your stress rate goes way down. Why is that? Well, you're not as worried about the police coming over.
You have help.
Your wife has left you back in the house. You know what I mean? People are talking to you. You're not going to get fired tomorrow. So your stress level goes way down. But then what happens is it slowly but surely rises back up. This is quality of life. Quality of life goes way up and then slowly but surely goes down. This, in the rooms, we call this the pink cloud. You ever hear that term? And that is that at a certain point in time, my family was no longer just celebrating the fact that I wasn't, throwing up on everybody. At some point in time, life shows up, and that's where you got to, all human beings need people. We need people to be around. We need people to bounce things off of. One of the other things that they're talking about as an epidemic, I don't know if I agree with the terminology, but is this loneliness and isolation epidemic. You'll see it in the news a lot. You have people who don't ever get around other people die earlier. So it's this idea of the groups and the therapists and the coaches and stuff become a support for you in a very specific area. And I believe it encompasses way more than just don't use. It encompasses all kinds of things like job support, or really just emotional support. The other thing, and I'm saying this as a therapist, how do I want to say this? So there are very few things that you can't talk to your coach about, sponsor, friend, that you have to bring to a therapist. You know what I mean? Like there's a small set of specialty skills that I have that other people don't, especially related to something like trauma. You should be talking to me. But otherwise, man, what happens when you talk? You're really just getting it out. And hopefully you're talking to somebody who's not judging you, because when you get it out and they're not judging you, you feel better. You release the pressure. You process it in your mind. So you also don't even have to overcomplicate the support. It's kind of like, but you got to be really careful. I don't know if any of you have ever had experience. Man, it's so freaking hot here. I'm gonna die. Can somebody turn that down? So I don't know if any of you guys have had the experience of saying some things to somebody and wishing you could take it back. If you've ever had that, it's like, woo, man, I wish I hit the rewind button on that. That's a little bit too much information for them. You want to make sure you're with safe people. So, all right. Well, first of all, any other questions about the substance use or mental health end of things? Anything else I can clear up? Yes, sir.
One last question. By the way, I'm addicted to everything except for people. I have a fear of them.
A fear of people.
So I don't judge anybody. If you've done it, I've been there, I've done that, and I've been in the medical field for 15 years. So when I particularly around somebody that's with the needle, I have to think Hippocratic oath. So now I have to make sure they have clean needles. I have to make sure if they're not shooting it up right, I have to do it for them. So for me, it's been, when I've used, it's been negative for me. Well, it's been an experience for me, but also I did have to take care of whoever I'm around. And so what I wanted to ask you about that is, how do you explain to someone, like some people, like my family, they don't understand how you have the chart up there about the...
Yeah, that's a great question.
They don't understand the levels.
So I don't know if you guys can hear the question. The question is, so I get it, Rich. I see what's going down. But what about my friends, my family, the people that are important to me? You got to get them in front of this information. And so the deal is, every Monday night here at 6:30, we have a family group. And it's the same process, and I do the family group, and I do the same thing. I do a lecture. It's also on my Facebook page, is all the family groups. I put them on there. And I have a blog called Recovery Cartel that has all my family groups on there. So you try to get them the information. All right, let's jump into positive psychology. So we'll talk positive psychology. Essentially, I'll tell you the story of positive psychology, and hopefully that'll kind of frame it up for us. Basically, the roots of psychotherapy and mental health are grounded in this idea of taking people who are really, really sick and keeping them from dying. Depression is the best example. I'm going to keep you from committing suicide, so you're going to come in and I'm going to do cognitive behavioral therapy, or I'm going to do psychoanalytic therapy, or whatever it is, and you're going to feel good enough that you're not going to die, that you're not going to kill yourself. Literally, Sigmund Freud, that freak of nature, who like, if Sigmund Freud was alive today, he'd be on the other side of the treatment system rather than the one giving it. So he said that the goal of psychotherapy was to get you to ordinary human misery. Now that's really exciting, isn't it? That's very hopeful. Positive psychology steps into the void and says, no, there's more to life than that. And yeah, you need to start with getting stable, but after you get stable, we want to see you kind of crank it up and have a good life. I got involved with positive psychology probably in 2005, 2006, when I was, I was in recovery 3 or 4 years at that point. I was okay. It wasn't depression. It wasn't anything serious, but I was relatively miserable. You know what I mean? And I tried all the things that I was supposed to try. I tried working the steps again. I tried going to another therapist. I tried going to different types of programs, and nothing was kind of like working. And then I heard about this stuff, and I went to the University of Pennsylvania where they were doing this and became certified in it, and I got a coach myself. And what I like about it is it's really like tangible stuff. Do you know what I mean? It's not like, tell me about your relationship when you were 3 years old. Tell me about, your mom when you were 3 years old. It's none of that stuff. It's like, what's happening today and what can you do to improve your mood? Yes?
SWB?
Oh, SWB is the technical psychological term used. It's not actually called happiness because that would be too easy.
Oh, God.
It's called subjective well-being. All right? So they go around, here's what they do. They basically, here's the story on how it starts. So Seligman, Martin Seligman, who founded this, he was the president of the APA at the time. So he's a psychologist himself, but he's notoriously grumpy. He has a great life. He's been published several times. His job is basically drive around the country and give speaking engagements at academic institutions. His kids love him. His wife loves him. Everything's great on the surface. The type of person you look at and say, what's that guy? I want his life. But he's notoriously grumpy. Not mean. Have you ever known this person I'm talking about? He's actually like kind of likable, but he's just grumpy as hell. You guys know who I'm talking about. You have one in your life. And so he's doing this thing, and one day he's out in the yard, and he's weeding the garden, and he's putting these weeds behind him in a pile as he does it, and his daughter's behind him, his 6-year-old daughter. She's throwing these things up in the air, and they're coming down in her hair, because I guess that's entertaining when you're 6 years old and you're a girl. You're like, I don't know what that is going on there. But he turns around and he scolds her. She starts crying. He feels horrible. He says, I'm sorry. She's doing the quiver lip cry, the ugly cry. You know what I'm talking about? Do you ever have your kid do that?
Sure.
Like you cannot, like, you're gonna give them whatever they want at that point. So she says, Daddy, do you remember whenever you made me give up my blankie? I guess it was a security blanket. And he says, yes, I remember that. You've been doing great with that. And she said, if I can give up my blankie, you can give up your grumpy. And he's like, oh, that's my 6-year-old daughter. Let me go check this out. So he goes in and he starts to check it out. And he said, how do I get happier? How do I get less miserable? And there's like 2 articles on happiness in the whole entire APA system. And neither one of them are telling you how to do it. They're just trying to explain what it is. There are 14,000 plus articles on depression.
Of course.
That's 1993. That's when he launches positive psychology. And here was the strategy. Let's go around the world and let's measure happiness. And when we identify people that are happy, let's ask them why they're happy. And let's see if there's any commonalities among people. So what makes people happy in Tokyo, Japan, in India, and in Greenville, what they found is there are common factors. And so then it was, okay, if those are common factors, that's pretty cool. That's pretty evident. Then let's do things that enhance those factors so that people can control their happiness level. Does that part make sense? Mm-hmm. There was a person before him that talked about it. It was Abraham Maslow. If anybody here ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is this idea of this what I was talking about was like you have to start with meeting your basic needs of safety and having enough food and not being. It's very hard to work on happiness if you think you're going to die, if you're under attack, right? This isn't something that they were worried about in like the 14th century, when everybody was dying from the plague and there were constant wars. This is something that happens in a lot of like societies where this is taken care of. But what's interesting was, this is what Maslow said. You can't be happy unless you have. What they found was, yes, you can. The thing that Seligman found was, that's not true. You don't have to have that met in order to be happy. They studied people who are part of the caste system in India. Anybody know what that is? That's the system. You cannot rise above it. It's not like America. You were born in poverty. You can pull yourself up or anything like that. This is, your job is to clean the sewers for the rest of your life. They're called the untouchables. And they were happy. They found people, and what made them happy is what makes us happy. And he said, well, that's kind of wild. Let's figure out what that is and let's teach people how to do it. You get that? All right. So, first of all, the formula. Half of your happiness you're born with. It's called a set point. Some of you are just born happier than others. We all know people who are just grumpy no matter what, and we also know people who are happy no matter what. You're like, whoa, what's up with her, man? Let me get a hold of whatever she has. And then, so that's half of it. 10% are your circumstances. When you're sick, you're not as happy. When you're broke, you're not as happy. When your family member's sick, you're not as happy. So circumstances, but it's only 10%, and 40% is voluntary control. Okay, so this is where we're focused. I'm going to talk about circumstances in a minute. We're going to talk about this. You can control your mood. And I'm going to give you, right off the jump, something you can do today that has been researched over and over and over again. It'll improve your mood. It'll reduce your stress. It's called 3 Good Things. And you challenge yourself to do this. And it's best if you have an accountability partner. But if you don't, you can just do it on your own. You tell yourself every day, at the end of the day, you're going to write down 3 good things that happened. And you're going to do that for 30 days without repeating yourself once. So in 30 days, you have to find 90 good things. And what will happen is you'll run out of the standard list about 2 days in. You guys know the standard list that everyone says. I'm grateful that I got my health. I'm grateful that I got my house. I'm grateful that I got a job. That's not what, that really doesn't do you any good. It's when you have to pay attention to your day and catch the good things. You know, catch the little good things is really what you're looking for, especially stuff like you're running late for a meeting and you don't catch traffic and it's 85. Like today, for example, a good thing, like when the hell did 85 actually become a highway you could drive on? Is that today? Did that start today? That's going on the list, man, because I did not expect that. You know, well, you know, or maybe you're in line, you're number 10 in line, and you're, you know, then a new cashier comes up and you go from 10 to 1. That's like winning the lottery to a certain extent, you know, and or maybe you expected to have a bad experience at work and you thought you were going to have a confrontation, but the conversation, those are what I'm talking about. And the deal is, if you make your brain pay attention for those things, you literally are reconditioning yourself from a negative orientation to a positive orientation. Now here's the kick with this, guys. This has been studied over and over and over again. But it doesn't work if you don't do it. And it doesn't work if you only do it once. It's like, you'll hop on my Facebook page and say, your 3 good things is bullshit. I did it twice. Because you're literally trying, you are programmed, human beings are programmed to find the negative because it protects us from danger. So you have to reprogram your mind to find the positive. When I did this, when I first got into it, the way it worked for me was it was, you know, I was paying a lot for this course, if you will. And so I had an accountability partner, so that motivated me to do it, right? And the second thing was I had to put money into a bank account that would be sent to a political candidate that I wasn't a big fan of. Ooh. If I didn't do it. Oh. So I was deeply motivated to find these things. And they would also reserve the right to disqualify your thing. Like, in other words, if they felt like you were lying and you were just making it up, they would call you out. So if I was like, man, really good thing when Disney stock went up and I cashed out, and they'd be like, you don't own any stock, dude. You know, like, you're out. Like, you get where I'm coming from? Or really glad my kids had a great, you know, you don't even have kids. So, but the point was, it forced me and the rest of the class to really, really pay attention. And I'm telling you, I still do it. I don't even consciously do it. Like, something will be going on. And that's what you want to do with 3 good things. So you can start that today. That's one takeaway from this group. The second one, PERMA. This is all you want to do is just look at this acronym and say, is there any area of my life that I'm just absolutely lacking in? Pleasure, am I having any fun? When was the last time I did something fun? The second thing is engagement. Am I doing anything that lights me up? Maybe it's sports, maybe it's art, maybe it's writing, maybe it's extreme sports, but am I doing anything that lights me up and excites me? Relationships, quality over quantity. You want to spend time with people who lift you up, and you want to minimize people who tear you down. Meaning, people who have either a spiritual meaning or even just this idea of there's more to the world than just me. They tend to do better. And then attitude is you can change your attitude regarding any given situation. Now this is something that I struggle with continually. Like, I don't know, like that sounds like so easy, but it's so hard, right?
Yep.
How do you change your attitude about any given situation? How do you do it? Anybody have any thoughts? I'm sure you've heard that before. Change your perspective, change your thinking, look at this differently, put yourself in the other person's shoes. How do you do it?
You have to intentionally replace
You have to do it 1,000 times. See, the misleading thing is that it makes you see like you can do it once and you're good to go. You want to do it over and over and over again. You get that one?
Yep.
Any questions about those?
Could you walk back through the acronym?
This is pleasure. Do something fun. This is called engagement. Do something that like lights you up and like captures your attention. This is relationships. Try to increase people who pick you up, decrease people who pull you down. This is meaning. What is there going on? Why are we here? What are we doing with the absurdity of life? And this is attitude. Change your attitude. Okay, we got that. Now we're moving into the Christmas season, aren't we? So I got a phone call, and they're like, "Hey, Rich, we want you to do." Everybody wants me to do stress management for the Christmas season. They want me to kind of like come over, talk to the employees, talk to people, talk us through this stressful season. Understand, like, Christmas is not more stressful, guys. It's busier. You get it? And if you're stressed about Christmas, it's probably not related to like the Christmas season. It's probably related to the fact that it's bringing up some unresolved feelings. And that real issues around Christmas are usually related to grief, loss, and like all the what ifs. Not the actual like busyness of the season. Not the fact that we gotta buy gifts and stuff. That's a different type of stress. If you have control over it, it's gonna stress you out a little bit, but if you feel like you can get it done, you make a list, you do your thing, that's not gonna bother you as much as these unresolved things in the back of your mind. So it's a little misleading. Yes, sir.
I got a question, speaking of the stress. A lot of the stress that I get is from fighting my natural inclination to play victim. So, and I mean, I feel like I'm a doctorate of victimology.
So I'm going to talk about mindset. I'm going to talk about shifting that in a little bit. Yep. One more thing about stress. Make sure that when you're trying to get your job, all the stuff you got to get done, make sure that it's a difference between speed and velocity. Speed is just moving quick and running around like a maniac and going over here and going over there. Velocity is I'm moving with an objective. And if you feel like you got too much on your plate, if you feel everybody's overwhelmed, everybody I meet, and how you doing? They say busy. I'm busy, man. And then I'll be like, shit, fuck, man, me too. And it'll be like this sort of like little support group will break out about it. But like the deal is like, so, and then there's all these time management books. You could like waste all your time on time management. The deal is, can you slow it down enough, slow is smooth and smooth is quick, to like really make lists and understand what you're trying to get done, and really like, am I working towards something? You're better off going slow in the right direction than you are running around in circles. That is very, very hard to do, but it's very important in stress management. I don't know if you guys can relate to that feeling.
Yep.
If you can relate to that feeling of like, I cannot get ahead of this.
Yep.
That's probably because you're in this, you feel like you're doing, this always happens to me. This is the story of my life. And now the problem is, what do you do about this? Like, what if you're in this zone and you don't even know you're in this zone? Do you get where I'm coming from? Like, I'm just busy because I have so much to do, and there's so much to do, and I'm so damn important, and I have so much to do, and I'm so damn important, I gotta do this. And how are you gonna get out of that if you don't even see it? You gotta find somebody who will tell you about yourself. My wife does it for me. Happily. Enthusiastically. Repetitively.
Now, you better stop.
Yep. You did it to yourself is like essentially how it comes out. Like, you chose to do that. You want to sit here and bitch and moan about the fact that you got to go from Pittsburgh to Baltimore, from Baltimore to DC, from DC to Raleigh, and do all these talks and stuff. You volunteered for them. When you found out you got a chance to do them, you were excited. Don't tell me about it. And then I'm like, I cannot dispute that. You see what I mean? Like there's no, that's, who do you have in your life that's going to tell you when you're in this zone? Because you can't break that zone if you don't know you're in it. Fair enough? All right. So let's just run through a couple other things. This is related to being in that zone. This idea of operating on automatic pilot, treating people a certain way, acting in different ways, and running around and just maybe we have certain behaviors that are just annoying to people, but we don't know it. And I wanted to talk about this thing called the Johari window. So the Johari window is basically, it's a psychological principle of how do we operate in the world. It's kind of like, do we know ourselves well? And what labels are we putting on our behavior, and are they accurate? So here's how it works. This is what other people know about us. This is about what we know about ourselves. And so you have this area called the open window where it's what we all know about each other. You guys know that I'm the CEO of Faber Greenville. You know I'm married because I just shared it. You know what I mean? Like you know certain things. I know certain things about you. There are other people who might know me a little bit better, but this is just kind of like open area for everyone. This is the stuff that I know about me, but you're never going to find out. Yeah, too weird. No, I'm just kidding. This is the hidden self, the secrets, right? This is a problem, but not a big problem. This is the subconscious. This is the stuff we don't even know that's driving our behavior. But this is the problem, the blind spot. This is the stuff that the rest of the world knows about us, but we don't know about ourselves. It's my wife saying to me, "You did it to yourself." Now, the problem is like if it's by definition, if it's a blind spot, you can't see it, and you're probably not going to wake up one day and see it. And I'm going to talk about some ways that you might be able to get there. This is what you want to minimize. If you can minimize that, you can start to change. Some of the things that get in the way of the blind spot is the stories we tell ourselves about what's going on with us. And you might have situations in your lives, it might be related to substance use, it might not, where you just have this ongoing story. Like you may be, like when you say victim, the victimology stuff, that starts usually like at a certain point, and and what it does is it relieves tension. Like if I'm able to say I'm a victim of this person or that person, it may even be accurate in that situation. But there's a payoff for it too, right? It makes me feel a little bit better about myself, that kind of thing. If I keep doing it, it becomes subconscious, and I don't even know I'm telling myself the stories. Do you guys get it? Mm-hmm. That's just an example. It could be anything. I'm going to tell you a story about my experience where like this was totally like unknown to me. Totally 100% blew my mind. So this is actually before I got into recovery. I was working, and I was part owner in a business that had like an HR. We were like an HR consulting firm. We did a lot of work in schools. We did a lot of work in hospitals, that kind of stuff, recruiting people, bringing them in. And there was a person on our team, and I'll never forget this. There was a psychologist working for us, and she was talking about this dude, and she was saying, he's just the nicest guy and stuff. And she was like rambling on about it, and I was like getting all jammed up over here, like, dude, that dude. And I'm like, what about me? I'm a pretty nice guy. And she said, well, I mean, you're not a mean guy, but I don't know if I'd call you nice. And I was like, what? And she was like, I mean, I would, do you really want to know? She said, do you really want to know? And I said, yeah, but what are you talking about? And in my mind, I was the nicest guy in the world. But she went on to say, you're not nice, Rich. You're funny, you make people laugh, but you're really kind of arrogant. You know, I would definitely not categorize you as nice. I wouldn't categorize you as mean, you get it? And I was like, this is an outrage. I'm going to go do some research. And so I go to people in the company, and I'm asking them, like, Jill says I'm not nice. And she's like, you thought you were nice? And I'm like, these people just don't like me because I'm better at my job than them. I'm going to get some feedback from home. And I go home and I ask Melissa, I'm like, I tell her the story, and all she could do is just laugh. Like uncontrollably for like 15 minutes, right? So I had no idea how I was coming off to the world. You get it? Like I had no idea how the rest of the world perceived me. Now I fell into that situation. You have to seek this out. I got to tell you, this is the hardest thing for human beings to do. There's two things. The hardest thing for us to do is to give realistic feedback and receive realistic feedback. What happens? We get defensive. We get angry. Nobody wants to make another person feel bad. You get where you have to. So you can't change a behavior that you're not aware of. Fair enough?
Yep.
And the problem with that is, if you don't change the behavior, it'll drive all these unconscious behaviors. And this is a very common way of changing, like of catching yourself before you do. Somebody said, I catch myself. You said, I catch myself doing the victim thing. This is a common a model that you'll hear people teach. It's like basically you want to observe the behavior you're trying to change. We do it. If you're in recovery for any period of time, you did this the whole, like you had to kind of be overemphasize this early on. Where am I going? What am I doing? I'm observing this drinking behavior. I want to change it. So we have to, but we had to know it was a problem to even start observing it. So we have to observe it. We have to orient ourselves to the situation and get the lay of the land. Then we have to decide what we're going to do, and we have to act. So you're at the wedding, and you thought you were going to be okay. You have this idea of, I don't want to drink in your mind already because maybe you were going to meetings, maybe you have a therapist, whatever it might be. You walk in, you orient yourself to the lay of the land. It's a little different than you thought. There were some people there that used drugs. You didn't expect them to be there. You could feel yourself getting jammed up. You make a decision to get out of there, and you get out of there. Everybody here knows what I'm talking about with that. You can do that with anything, even like personality clashes or other things that you want to change, but you got to become aware of it first. And the truth is, the awareness part is the harder part. You don't, like if I'm in that situation where I'm being offensive to people and they're seeing me as arrogant, and how would that play out and hurt me? Maybe it would have cost me a promotion or something. Do you guys get it? Maybe down the road, I wouldn't have been able to get the business that I wanted because the way people perceive me. If I don't ever know that's going on, I can't ever change that, and eventually it damages me. So that's why, who are you going to get that's going to tell you about this? Anybody have anybody that tells them about that? Okay, good. If you get people, this is so difficult, man. Like I will tell you in management, whenever even people that you're supervising, human beings, we are not designed to get in a room with another person and make them feel bad about themselves. We are not designed that way. There's a label for people who like that. It's narcissism and sociopathy. You know, it really is. If you're too into it, that's a problem, guys. If you're like back in the corner going, hey, I'll tell anybody about your shit if you want me to. That's because this feels weird, man. This feels very uncomfortable. But you gotta, and where do you look for that person? You can find a coach, you can find a sponsor, you can find a therapist. Has anybody ever had a friend that they feel like fell into that category? You know, what's one of the things you got to be careful of? You got to make sure you get a good, solid person, right? Have you ever had a situation, or you'll even see it in movies, it's a common theme in movies where I'll share something with Joni, and then Joni will go blow it to everybody and tell everybody what and you can see how damaging that is. And what do? I go inside myself and I say, I'm not telling anybody anything. I'll just deal with this myself and try to figure it out. That's tough. That's what you want to try to come through. Any comments on the blind spot before we jump on? All right, a couple other ways that you might be able to get there. One of this idea of mental models or mental maps, and trying to figure out how you make sense of the world. Your quote on victimology. How do I come to that? If I can actually honestly assess my behavior, then maybe I don't need to have my wife tell me about myself. And you can do that, but there are things that get in the way of it. One is groupthink. Let's pretend you go to work every day, you're around the same people every day. What will happen is that it'll become so routine, and you'll see this a lot with political situations or religious conversations. And if you want to see this in action tonight, just turn on any cable news and watch what's going down. You'll see that there's actually no communication going on. This is what the truth is about my world, and you can say whatever you want. That's called groupthink, and that keeps us from actually understanding ourselves, because we don't have anybody around us to reflect anything other than who we already are. And so you want to watch out for that. Cognitive bias means you see what you want to see. Here's an example of cognitive bias on a different level. If you've ever bought a red Toyota Camry and then all of a sudden you see a bunch of red Toyota Camrys. I don't know if that's ever happened. That's what that's about. It's like your brain is tuned into finding things that tell you like you're normal, you're good, all that kind of stuff. And then social proof is we all have the tendency to basically say yes if we're in a group. Like we literally can make, you can, I should do this in the group. I can make you stand up when I want you to stand up. I can make you cross your arms if I want you to cross your arms. Like there's things that you can do, we will mimic behavior. There was a candid camera segment that was done. And what happened was, so they got this, they're in an elevator, it's back in the 50s, so they call him a Confederate. This is the guy who's in on it. He's in the elevator, and this is like the back of the elevator. And people get on the elevator. I'll pull it up and see if I can find it. So, and then he goes like this and faces the back. And then the other people look at each other, and then they face the back. You want to see it?
Yeah.
No. Nah, we got to go through this. I know
Is
some
there
of
a
y'all.
door in the back?
Huh? What's that?
Is there a door in the back?
No, he just turns around. He at one point he turns everybody around. And they all do it. Have you ever seen the social proof with the guy Dan? I gotta show you this one. Okay, I'm sorry. If you need to go, if you need to turn in a sheet to TACA and go, you can do that. Let me pull this up in the meantime. Is it coming up? No, internet.
Oh, no.
No, it'll come on. It'll come on. Stick around for a second and check this out, and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, let's do this. Let's do this. YouTube. What would it be under? Okay, here it is. So this is I want to get the one that doesn't have somebody else talking about it. I'll do it. I'll do the talking. TED Talks. See, they don't just have that. They might have taken down. Okay, here we go. So this is at a music festival. Let me set the stage for you. This is at a music festival, and what it's meant to do is it's meant to illustrate how you can go from being an outcast and people think what you're doing is weird to all of a sudden it becomes the thing to do. And there's a very predictable process to it. You need to have what's called the first follower. Then you need to have like 2 or 3 other people join in. This guy's clearly on ecstasy or something. Let's make sure we're clear on that. And this is in Seattle, Washington at a music festival called Sasquatch Music Festival, which is a fantastic name for a festival, right?
Right.
And the point of this is, guys, we subconsciously follow each other. We do, whether we want to say we don't, we do. And so here's how it worked in this case. Now, this is interesting. The leader supports him. Do you see what I'm saying? So if that first guy comes up and this crazy dude like blows him off, whatever, but he actually teaches him how to dance in his way. This is like, do it like this. Do it like this. Now he's getting his crew. Still kind of weird. People are like, what the heck? But they hang in there. They're still doing their thing. That's Favorite Greenville 5 years ago. Everybody's like, you suck, Rich, you suck, you suck. Now I got one more. You got my man up there going at it. Yep. Oh, I'd be on that shit right there. Watch what happens. Everybody runs. She's pointing out how it's interesting they're joining the group. So I'll let you guys watch the rest of it, but do you see what happens? It goes from those people over there are weird, or that guy over there is weird, to like if you weren't over there, you were weird.
Right.
Yeah.
And so this is this subconscious process called social following, which it will get us to act against our own best nature. We've heard it since we were kids, peer pressure and stuff like that. But it even goes beyond the obvious stuff of like, hey, throw a rock through that window, right? Or take a hit of this. It goes to what we say, how we treat each other, what we think, unfortunately, what we think about ourselves. And what this shows you is you can flip the script on it. You can redefine who you want to be, and you can redefine who you're wanting, and you can tell yourself a different story. First, you got to find out, like, what's your version of dancing weird on the hill? This is like Favor Greenville to me, you know, because the first 2 years, it's 6 of us in a meeting like this.
Or less.
Me, Mark, Mike Malone, and 2 other people from the street. If anybody came in other than the staff, they were cured, man. He's like, okay, I got him, you got her, okay, we're good, let's go. You're with me all day, let's go, where are we going? You know, and now it's like, what, 4 sites, 45,000 people, you know, because we kept dancing like freaks, even though everybody told me everybody told us we were wrong. That's not how you do this. Well, we don't need to clap for that. That's cool. We'll do the celebration. But you get the point? So what is it? And this is in a group. Maybe it's a smaller group. Maybe it's only certain people who are very, very close to you. Now, this is really common where it isn't necessarily a big, obvious thing. It's more like an influential person, you know, and a person maybe you're in a relationship with. Have you ever acted different around this friend than you do this friend? This is an area, if you want to start looking at your blind spots and trying to figure out how do I change, this is whenever you start like acting different or maybe saying different things and things you normally wouldn't because you're around this person, you want to take a look at that. There's something going on. There's something up because you're not being true to yourself, right? So what other comments about social following or any other questions about that part of the process? Okay.
What band was playing?
It's Santa Gold. Who said that? Yes. I knew it if you'd give me a minute. It's so yeah, it's a great song too. All right, so let me just see if there's any other like real quick thing that we need to go over, and then I'll let you guys get out of here.
Can you give another example of voluntary control real quick?
So another example of voluntary control. Another example of voluntary control would be the free 3. So it's not on here, but I'll take it. So this is another area that's been shown. Same as 3 good things. You got to do it every day, preferably for a month. You make sure. Now this is interesting. You got to make sure you assign yourself the task. It's not just that you happen to be outside, but you got to go outside. And they say, well, how long? Most people would say at least 15 minutes outside. If you get out in the nature, that's even better, but walk around the building or something. Find something to laugh at. Find something to laugh at. And in today's world, you pull something up on YouTube or do whatever you need to do. And listen to music.
Yes.
Okay, now remember, this is different than I just happen to listen to music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We all, when I say that to people, like, well, I listen to music in the car ride over here. I'm not in a better mood. You turn it into assignment. You do it like intentionally. There was this guy that I know in Pittsburgh. We used to always say to each other, Dave lives his life on a soundtrack. He lives life on a soundtrack. In his case, it was Meatloaf. The song, the Paradise by the Dashboard Lights, whatever that album is, it seemed to always be playing at his house, or we would go out and we asked him about it. He never knew this, but he basically said, like, I do this because it gets me in the right mind frame. For whatever reason, that music put him in a good place. The type of music you listen to is 100% up to you. Obviously, you recommend upbeat stuff, that kind of thing. What other questions or thoughts before we go on? Anything else I can tell you? Here's an interesting exercise that I love doing. This is especially if you have somebody who, if you're like maybe professionally, you're around like another company or something, or in my case, it could be treatment centers or other recovery, like somebody that just rubs you the wrong way. Ask yourself the following question. in relation to this scenario, so let's pretend the scenario is we need to build a detox across the street, and Faber thinks you need to do it, and the state government's saying no. How do I see myself in this situation? I see myself as what? Righteous and correct and looking out for people. Do you follow me? So you fill that in. The second one is, how do they see themselves? Now you got to, what do you have to do to fill this out? You have to literally step outside of yourself, and you have to say, what would it be like to be the government responsible for a certain amount of money? So you say like, well, they're in a tough spot. They see themselves as being responsible for a limited budget. You get what's going on here? You're now trying to like understand that you're not the only good person in the room. Okay. And then how do you think they see you? Well, they see me as, you know, this knucklehead who's just trying to cause problems, you know, whatever you're telling yourself, and you're honest with yourself. And then how do you see them? Man, and this is the one that bothers me when I do it for me, because I do not have a problem with anybody personally. But when I honestly answer that, it comes out as if I do in my head. You follow what I'm saying? Like, I don't like being combative like that. And it makes me pay attention to all these things that aren't there. You could do this if, hey, Christmas time's coming up. Do one of these on your sister-in-law, right? Seriously, like how do you see yourself in relation to having Thanksgiving dinner with your sister? I shouldn't so first. Hypothetically, with your sister-in-law, you know, and how do you roll through this? I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Okay, so that's a really stupid thing to say. All right, so let's go here. Let's go. This one is an interesting exercise. This has to do with making a difficult decision. Do we buy the house? Do we not buy the house? Do we buy the car? Do we not buy the car? Do I go to rehab? Do I not go to rehab? So you got like a problem in front of you, and you have an idea you've identified what the issue is, and you say to yourself, what should we do about this? Let me think. Okay, so these offices, when we expanded, we doubled in space. That means we also doubled in rent, and we had a lot of money on the upfit. I struggled with that decision, and I don't know if you've ever struggled with a decision. Not making the decision is worse than actually when you do make the decision. There's two things that have been identified as really bad. One is, what do I do, what do I do, what do I do? And the second is called buyer remorse after you do it. The actual process itself, is pretty uneventful. You just sign the form, you do your thing. So I'm up in my head, what am I going to do? I didn't do this then because I just got coached up on this. But what I could have done was say, all right, you don't know what to do with this, but do you know what not to do? And what I would have said to that is, I know for sure I can't not do anything. We're going to have to expand somewhere. We don't even have room. Everybody's sitting on it. It would have talked me through it quicker. And it's called inversion. So when you're having a difficult decision, flip the script, and instead of saying, what should I do, say, okay, what do I know that I should not do? What am I not going to do? And what will happen is, by process of elimination, you'll come to the conclusion. And you'll be more comfortable with it. All right?
Yep.
All right. So listen, we're going to wrap this thing up for today. Again, I will announce like I did today when I'll be back and when I can do this stuff, and we'll kind of get it on the schedule. We're going to have more space for groups, and we can always talk about doing this at other times. You can check this out, again, on my blog, recoverycartel.com. You can check it out on my YouTube channel, or whatever the hell it's called, recoverycartel.com. Also, uturn.net. Uturn.net is, we're really pushing this thing, guys. We're moving this thing forward. It's a lot of this content, but done in a very sophisticated way. It's not just me and my camera. So if you go on there, you'll see that there's a way to log in. That's $2.95 a month. I told Mike Malone the other day what it was. He had, how much does it cost? I said $2.95. He thought I meant $295. $2.95, and it's the only, and that's because it's high. It's very expensive technology platform. That's just places you can go to get more of this information. All right. We will see you here hopefully on Monday. That's all we got. Make sure you get the forms to TACA. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.